Hey there, and welcome to Becoming a Bow Hunter. I'm your host, Matty, and join me and our guests as we take the quality of meat back into our own hands. Searching the wild for free-ranged animals to harvest as ethically as we can. I interview a variety of specialists from the bow hunting community to help fast-track your journey as a bow hunter. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this chinwag on one of your favorite topics in the world, bow hunting.
Different mediums and platforms for sharing our interest, whether it's bow hunting or rifle hunting. So I reckon it's awesome what you're doing.
Dude, thank you. I agree. Like, I only actually just discovered your YouTube channel, which is incredible.
Oh, real?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's...
No, I've only started it. Yeah, it's relatively new. I think it's just gone on to 2 years now.
Yeah.
But I used to just take a lot of photos and write articles. That was my way of documenting and capturing hunts, was to do it through photos and stories. But to do it through film, I think it's a way more realistic and emotive, and you can add the narration, the music, so you can give it layers that you can't quite tease out in a story the same, I think.
Definitely, dude. So, put you in it with the person too. Like, you get to feel it a lot more.
Yeah, I agree. And so when I watch other people's, like, I've read a lot and find myself now watching more than reading. And I enjoy reading, but there's something really moving about watching someone's piece.
Yeah. I've always been a very audible learner, so a lot of my stuff, like a lot of the content I consume, is either podcasts or audiobooks or YouTube, but I just won't really watch. I just listen a lot of the time. Just have it playing in the background, and I find it's just an incredible way to kind of, for me to learn. So I don't know, there's lots of other people I think that are exactly the same, so I enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you can cater for lots of different styles of sharing of knowledge, whether that's through photos on Instagram, which is very visual, or storytelling in books or podcasts, or however which way. Some people like to do presentations like that Donnie Vincent. I just think that's anything that helps promote this really interesting outdoor recreational sport that we call hunting is a good thing.
Yeah, dude. No, I thoroughly agree. And actually, I'm already recording, so we'll just keep it rolling. But one thing, so Jamie Carle, everybody, good introduction for you. So, I mean, at mountainman_NZ on Instagram, but you can also check out his YouTube channel, which is Mountain Man, as one word, hunting films. Dude, I'd love if I could to take your poem and use the audio from it, and I'll insert it, if that's cool.
Yeah, wow. Okay, thanks.
So we'll put that right now.
Who am I? I am just a man who loves the mountain, an explorer, an adventurer, a seeker, a mountain man. The mountains, they call me, whispering in my sleep. We are connected, I am bound to them, but I am not tangata whenua. To the heavens I climb, clouds kiss my cheek. I am at home with she, Mother Nature, tranquil, unforgiving. Her moods vary. She is timeless, I am not, for I am just a man. Why the mountains? Why not the sea? What is it that draws me? Forest I smell, earth beneath my feet, birds I hear, and wild game I seek. I place down camp, a bed of tussocks. The wind drifts upwards and collides. I hear wafts of waiata and ear-piercing bagpipes. My heritage is woven like wharariki. I am strong, I am proud, and I belong. These mountains are my home. I respect those who were here before me, ancestors present and those now gone. Kinships forged, memories made, characters built and journeys paved. These mountains are a powerful place. Without them, I would lose my way. And at times I will be absent, for family, work, and city life calls. These mountains will remain steadfast until the next adventurous haul. I will voyage with purpose, my bearings hold true, and I will seek new valleys to sidle through. Follow my lead and trust in me. I will share my knowledge of each journey.
But yeah, dude, I think it's really cool. I only just heard it before, and I thought at first it was someone else's poem, and then I realized it was yours, and you'd fully done it yourself. It's all your footage. It's all your the music, obviously something you've taken from somewhere. But what kind of inspired that for you?
Man, really interesting question. I've never been asked that, and it starts from a New Year's resolution in 2017. Mm-hmm. That's when I decided I wanted to share hunting through a lens rather than, a lens, photography I do, but through filming. And I just decided that I needed to have an opening to that channel. So the first thing I did, literally, man, I was on the train going to work, and I've always been one to like writing, and I used to write a lot of poems when I was younger, funny poems like, play upon words, and usually had an outdoor or hunting element. And it just came to me, like I just could not write that poem down fast enough in the train, and by the time I got to work, I'd written all of it. It needed some refining, but I kind of felt like, wow, that's what I want to have as the opening to the channel. Yeah. And then I recorded it from my phone on the walk home, which is probably why you can hear birds squawking and maybe the odd car driving past. I sort of walked away from the road and into a playground and just recorded it near a playground where it was a bit quiet. And that was the poem. And I thought that's what I want to have as the opening. I've always had like a real strong, deep connection with the landscape and hunting and what it means to me. So I feel like the poems are a good way to get quite deep into what it means to me.
Yeah, definitely.
And if I can share what I love about hunting with others, and it in some way helps people, it inspires people, motivates people, then I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, totally, dude. And I mean, I'd love to get into that a little bit deeper, actually, about like what hunting actually means to you. And I think so many people think of it as it's either primal to people or it's cruel of people. And I try to always take it away from the cruelty side of things, because like, oh, hold up, there's so much more to it than just that. And realistically, if you're eating meat, I think it's something that you should experience, is hunting and culling your own food, because realistically, like, how else do you think you're getting it? It's not just like, it's just way too convenient now. And the thing that I think is biggest is that hunting gets seen as like people who are, it's got a bad word to it, really. It's got a bad picture to it. And it's the thoughts that you're just out to literally go and take lives, and that's all it's about. But I think probably 99% of the people who are out there are actually like double thinking before they pull the trigger. And it's not just an easy route. The enjoyment comes from being out in the bush and, like you said, connecting back with the land and connecting back with the animals, and actually getting to see the animals out in the open and see what they do. Like, I've got so many people that I know who are vegans who have no concept of what animals do in the wild because they've never really connected with them. And it's almost like that battle that I've always got, like, against them, as to, hey, well, hold up, how much do you actually know about these things that you supposedly care about so much? Like, all you're saying is they've got a soul and they deserve to live, and that's why we should not eat them. But at the same time, it's the circle of life. Like, it's literally how life has been designed. And if we go into the science of how plant versus animal proteins are made, like, animal protein is superior to what your plant protein is, and there's not many people genetically made up who can survive off of just plant proteins. It just doesn't work. So it's like the circle of life is literally how it is. And it's kind of like, for us as individuals, getting out and experiencing what hunting is like, it's not just about the food, or it's not just about the hunt. I think there's so much more that it's almost hard to explain because of how deep it goes. And it literally feels primal in the fact that you know that so many ancestors before you have gone and done it. And as much as you might feel guilty or bad at times for doing what you're doing, at the same time, there's that rush and there's that thrill of doing it as well. It's quite crazy. So, dude, if you could dive into a little bit more, like, what does hunting mean to you?
Yeah, well, you've covered it really well there. It's complex, and there's no other way around explaining it than it's complex. And maybe the only way to explain it is to take somebody along on that journey, whether that's physically, come with me, I'll show you what it's about, because it's not just about killing an animal like for the glory. And I'll circle back to that later, because I think that I've played a part in portraying it badly in the past with photos of just trophies, and it's easy to lose the real meaning of it with just a photo.
Yeah.
And there's a story behind it, and there's that complexity that you can really only experience in person, or take someone along with a camera, or write about it in a very detailed way so that people can try to comprehend what it is that we're doing and why that we're doing it. And I think the why I really enjoyed hunting and it just grabbed me was that it was primal. I think probably first and foremost, there was always this interest in wanting to hunt for something or find something or go out and have an adventure discovering things, whether that was animals or landscapes. You know, you'd get over a ridge and a whole landscape would open up that you didn't know was there. That primal instinct to want to go and explore and have an adventure was always there. But I think for me, a lot of it's also about peace and tranquility. I just feel so at ease by being out in nature. And so for me, that was such a big calling. Like if hunting wasn't challenging and didn't have the terrain and that wilderness and that remoteness to it, if it was just shooting on properties or spotlighting or doing it in a different way, not that I've got a problem with people that do it that way, but that's not what interests me. So being able to go out into public land, into the forest, not see anyone for days on end, listen to birds calling in the morning, hear that chorus in the evening, all of that is really what makes that hunting experience up. The shooting an animal is, to be honest, I actually feel a little bit of remorse whenever I shoot an animal. Yeah. I've never, I don't think, there's been a few times in my life where I've been really stoked to have got an animal because I really wanted it that bad, but I still always had little pangs of, well, I've taken your life, that sort of sucks for you, but then the upside of it, and it's always been what originally drew me to hunting, was why am I doing it? Because I want to take the meat. I want to take that clean, organic food source and bring that home. And when I shot my first deer at 15, and it was with a rifle, not a bow, and I know you do a lot of bow hunting, when I shot my first deer with a rifle, I was with an older guy who showed me what to do, and he showed me how to butcher it and break it down into the different compartments of meat. And like I was learning stuff almost every second with this guy who was my mentor, and just seeing that you'd have roasts, you'd have steaks, you'd have mince, you'd have sausages. Everything had a role or a purpose, and it was kind of like, for a person who's I think I'm quite rational, and I like to understand what it is that we're doing before going ahead and doing it. It was kind of like giving meaning to what it was we were doing, even more meaning. Like, it had meaning going out in the wilderness, but then to track an animal, find it, kill it, unfortunate, but kill it, then break it down and utilise it and harvest it and bring that home, and then watch the reaction on your family's face. Like my father and mother, when they first saw I'd got a deer, they were kind of like, wow, you really are growing up now, Jamie. You become a young man. You're doing this of your own calling. I wasn't brought up in a hunting family. Well, I was brought up in a family that had always a shotgun and a 22, but my dad wasn't into deer stalking when I was growing up. He did it at university when he was needing food. That was his reason. He did shoot animals for food because it was tough times in the 70s. And here I was at 15 doing it out of my own back. I was the one that said, Dad, I really want a gun license. And he said, well, if you want a gun license, you need to get a minimum of 70% for my, on average for all of my exams in fifth form, which is maybe year 10 here, or 11. And anyway, I got 70.4%, and he gave me $1,000 towards my first rifle. And then I had to sit my gun license test. And when I passed that, he gave me the rifle. That's it was all me wanting to do that, because I had this strong, maybe it's what you pointed out earlier, this primal calling to want to be out in the wilderness pursuing wild animals so I could take the meat home. And And I wasn't, and I never have become a great cook. I must admit, I'm not the best cook, but I still love that feeling of providing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a big part of it. I'm actually so thankful for the first time I ever saw a deer shot. The guy who shot it, like, he was just so respectful to the animal, and the way that he went about the whole process was just incredible. And he shot the animal, and at first I didn't understand it, but he was shaking from adrenaline. He was just like crazy from it. Like, and this was a rifle shot. And he was just on edge of tears, and it was crazy. And he got 2 deer, like, in one. He shot one, the other one just stayed by and just hung around, so he shot the other one. And we got over to them, and I was kind of like rushing to see them, and he's like, no, you got to stay back. Like, we got to make sure that we let the soul leave. Like, we got to make sure that we're really respectful to the animal. Like, it's now served its purpose in life, and now it's about to be part of our lives because we're going to feast on it. And it was quite a respectful way of showing me of, hey, it's not just about killing. It's about, like, hey, yes, we're taking the animal's meat, like, we're taking the meat from the animal, but it's also had a life that we now need to, I guess, give respect to as well. And it was really cool to kind of see him. He got down on his knee, and he put his hand on the deer and just kind of stroked it a few times and said thank you to it. And he closed its eyes, and it was just really, really respectful. And that was a really big eye opener to me. And that was a fair few years ago when I saw that, and I was like, wow, okay, like, it was more of an understanding. And I think to have it shown to you that way, like, I'd seen plenty of critters killed before, but it was all like rabbits and pigs and pests, really, or wild dogs. Whereas when I saw it like that, it put it in a different light. It was like, oh, hold up, this is a resource that we can use as I guess as humans, and based on the fact that in Australia we've got these critters that are seen as pests, but they can actually be such a really good resource for us in so many ways, more than just meat. Like, the big thing I'm a big advocate for bow hunting for in particular is how much of a mental aspect it has to it. Like, it's just so good for mental clarity. And, like, I think if you could take a depressed person out hunting, they would feel so much better straight afterwards.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You touched on a really interesting point about pests versus resource, and I think I can only really speak for New Zealand because I don't understand the long history of hunting in Australia. But in New Zealand, initially they were seen as resources when they were first acclimatised towards the end of 1800. Basically, they were liberated. Very early 1900, they were kind of starting to, for the first 20 years, protect the deer, basically. Like, you were not allowed to hunt red deer in New Zealand because they were trying to build a population up so that these acclimatisation societies or deer stalker type clubs, that's what they became later, had a sportsman resource to go and hunt. But then sort of from the 30s and 40s, when they realised the numbers were getting too high, that attitude towards them just flipped. Like, it was about conserving the native biodiversity in New Zealand, being the flora and the fauna, so that you didn't have too high numbers, and it was seen as a pest thereafter. So they did a lot of culling. They sent in professionals to do, I guess, eradication schemes and utilise the meat and sell it. And for years, even when I was growing up, all of the mentality of a lot of the older generation that were into hunting had this concept about, we're out here because we need to conserve animal numbers and, you know, shoot every deer that you see type thing. So my attitude started at that point, and that's why I shot pretty much every animal that I saw for the first few years. But that slowly changed over time, and I didn't want to shoot everything that I saw, and I was utilising everything. Sorry, when I say shoot everything, it wasn't that we'd shoot large numbers and leave them. It was always still about bringing the food home, but it was still very much like, here's a deer, shoot it. You know, the only good deer is a dead deer. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a healthy attitude to have, although if the system can't sustain a healthy population of its natural biodiversity, then in some cases you do have to do some animal removal. So, you know, New Zealand's got this checkered history with hunting, and it's very different to the European history. You know, you were talking about closing the eyes, letting it take its last breath, paying respect to essentially the last of its soul before it left, or its spirit before it left its body. Like, the Europeans do have a much more deeper connection to hunting than what I think New Zealanders do. certainly the traditions over there are hundreds and hundreds of years old and a lot deeper and more meaningful than what I think is commonplace in New Zealand. But that's not to say that people don't still have a lot of respect and enjoy and cherish the opportunities to go hunting in New Zealand. It's just that it's different. We've just got a different checkered history with our interactions with those wild animals on our, they're foreign animals on our landscape, and it might be similar in Australia. I couldn't talk to that though.
I think there's both sides here, and definitely I can understand the whacking and stacking when it's something like a farmer whose crops are being taken, or like I've seen it in my aunties and uncles' farm. Like pigs come there, and sometimes there'll be 2 pigs, and other times there's like 40 or 50. And they literally just rip the fields apart. Like then they have to worry about, so the food's going missing for the cattle, the ground's unstable for the cattle, so they could potentially break legs. Like bits and pieces of everything can happen because of these pigs being around. And the pigs are so brutal; they'll come and like push the cattle off of their feedlots and stuff just so they can have food. So when it comes to that stage, you're like, okay, I completely understand it because it's about your livelihood now. Like, yeah, exactly. I think something that's cool about New Zealand is that it seems to have always been used as a resource, though. Like, I've talked to a fair few New Zealanders, and a lot of them have freezer full of deer, of venison. Like, it's a pretty common thing for them to have that, and it's not. I don't know if it's always the way, but it seems like it's not as frowned upon as what it might be here in Australia.
Totally agree. Yeah, definitely agree. I think everyone in New Zealand who's come up through a outdoors hunting and fishing type background will all have freezers that at some point in their year, might not be every month, but sometime in the year, it'll have wild game in it, whether that's crayfish, whether that's fillets, whether that's kidna, whether that's pawa for diving, or you guys call them abalone here, whether that's red deer, pork. There'll be some sort of wild game in their freezers at some point throughout the year. And a lot of times it's springtime because that's when a lot of animals come out to feed, and it's kind of coming into barbecue season. I know when I go back to New Zealand in 2 weeks' time to catch up with family, my brother's going to be busting out the snags that he's got from during the year from hunting pigs or deer.
Yeah.
So it's really common, and that was one of the shocking eye-openers for me when I came to Perth, was just how foreign hunting is. Like, if you were to describe Australia to any of you that are not from Australia or from a different part of Australia, Western Australia would have to be the most stringent, regulated place for hunting and firearm ownership, and also the most, put it this way, people don't get it over here. They don't get it. They don't understand hunting. They don't know why you would even do that when you can buy it from the supermarket. The attitude from a lot of people, which is why for many years I actually didn't really even talk to people in WA about hunting, because there was such misunderstanding and misconstrued views about what it was that it just didn't have a good vibe when I had the conversation, so I just stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was a real shame. But being able to do it on YouTube, like a platform, or your podcast, people that want to talk or listen to hunting will go to those platforms because they're interested. So, you can have those meaningful conversations with people again, which I haven't had the chance to really do in WA because it's frowned upon here. It's not normal. There are very few people that have had that opportunity or upbringing of hunting and gathering. Fishing, yes. Everyone fishes. Well, lots of people fish over here. They understand that. But hunting is...
it's quite bizarre because it's not that different, right? Like, they're so similar. But yet it is such a thing here in Australia that literally fishing's like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Everyone goes and does fishing. Whereas you talk about, oh, we culled some deer or we culled some pigs or rabbit or whatever it is, and we ate it. It's just like, oh, yuck, why would you do that? Like, it's so bizarre that it's just frowned upon. I was actually a bit scared to start at first. I was a bit worried of starting the podcast because I thought it might cop some slack, and having the Instagram page and everything, but I literally have not had one person pipe up on it at all, which is awesome. Like, I thought that by now there'd be some haters come through, but it hasn't happened, which is insane.
Yeah, and you know what? If haters come along, I think the way to look at it is like, is that an opportunity to... put it this way, if you uphold yourself professionally and your conduct is positive and you've got a good intent, which clearly you do, and a lot of us hunters do, it's only the minority that might cause concern or polarise what the majority are doing right. But the way I see it is you have an opportunity to maybe change some of those haters' views
educate them.
By educating them. And so, almost embrace it. If you get comments, I get some comments sometimes from people that don't necessarily agree, and I welcome those comments because I think it's part of a healthy debate.
Yeah.
And look at, like, is this an opportunity to try and change their perspective? Often not, but I don't stop trying.
No, definitely not. And I think it's quite interesting nowadays, like, because people can just sit behind their keyboard and type whatever they want and forget that there's a person on the other side. Like, it's that disconnect of I can say whatever I want right now, whereas if they were face to face, it'd probably be a completely different conversation. The way it would play out would probably be a lot more respectful than how it comes across on a keyboard sometimes. But I've had plenty of battles through life on keyboards. Not it's more so in regards to like trying to defend myself or something, like based on the business side of things. We get people attack it at different times, sometimes because people have different beliefs on what nutrition should be, and that's all well and good. But then we had a logo for a while that was a native Indian head chief, and a native chief that had a head bonnet on, and the head bonnets were used for battle. And when we first did it, we didn't think of we didn't think of it as being a disrespectful thing. Yet we copped a lot of abuse for that. We were based on the fact of, hey, like, a chief is the head of their tribe. It's like, to be a chief is like the top dog. Exactly.
Yeah.
And we only saw it as an awesome way of life. Yeah. We got attacked by people, and it was never natives. It was typically like white people who had friends that were natives or something like that would come and attack us and say, well, hold up, this is so disrespectful because you're using the head bonnet, which was only used for battle, and you don't know what they went through, and it's not up to you to continue telling their story. I'm like, okay, well, that's well and good. Like, we ended up changing our logo because it was happening every few months. But I think the biggest thing is that it's almost like, rather than seeing that we were using it as we're putting them as the pinnacle, it was seen as you were using it to sell your stuff. And I'm like, no, that's never what it was intended to be, which is quite interesting. So, that was something that we always had that I've kind of always been on the defending front for. And I'm always happy to have those conversations because it's like, hey, I'll try to educate you as best as I can from my standpoint. But some people, they just can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and look, when those conversations are so one-sided, then the best thing is to sort of disengage from that, because otherwise you probably are just wasting your time, and you could be using it for other good things. So you do get that sometimes, but just some rhetorical questions, if you can plant in their brain around, well, a vegan's probably the hardest one to convince because they're not eating any meat whatsoever, but people that do still eat meat but then have an opposition or an opposed view towards hunting, you can plant some rhetorical questions in their brain that they may not listen to at that point in time, but hopefully they take it away and that little seed sprouts and they go, you know what, that's kind of true. I am buying my food from the supermarket and someone else is doing the killing for me, and it's in a farm in an intensified environment, whereas this guy is going out, or woman's going out and doing it in the wild. And that's actually a point that I sort of subtly made to my kids on this camping trip that I've just been on when I shot a pig right next to camp. They were just behind me at camp and I shot a pig right on last light. And they came over, they asked a ton of questions, and, they were curious but also sad, but then kind of like, well, what are you doing with it now, Dad? And I just explained to them, kids, I am going to take the meat off, because they've seen me bring meat home before, but they've never seen the actual animal on the ground and the breaking down of the animal, and I've purposefully not exposed them to that, even though there's been opportunities when they were much younger to shoot deer, and I just didn't feel like it was the right time. I didn't feel that they would even understand or remember and be able to have a conversation about it. But now that my oldest is 7 and Saskia's 5 and she's quite cluey, I felt it's okay to do that. And I explained to them that, I'm choosing to take my meat from this landscape right now rather than purchase it at a supermarket. And I said to them, do you like eating meat? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, do you like eating meat that's from an animal in front of you, or do you like eating it from a supermarket? And of course, they said it from a supermarket. And I was like, okay, well, that's because that's what you're used to. But you know that the meat from here tastes even better than the stuff from a supermarket. And just trying to plant those little seeds in their heads. And I don't know where they're going to go with their interest in hunting. I don't mind if they've got no interest in it. I just want them to have an understanding of it, or a respect for those people that choose to do it, like their father. Because I'm not going to stop doing it. Even if they say, Dad, we really don't want you to hunt anymore, I would be quite respectful, but I would be quite honest and say, well, then I just won't share the hunting experiences with you anymore, but I'm still going to keep doing it.
Yeah. There was actually a question that I had written down. It was like raising kids in the bush, like how has your approach been to it? And that's kind of cool that it just naturally came out.
Yeah, I think, look, I've never wanted to push anything on the kids. Like my wife and I have got strong values, and we're constantly parenting, right? I mean, every day parenting, and there's messaging that you're giving, whether that's explicit messaging or implicit, non-verbal and verbal communication. We do all of that stuff, but I never intentionally want to make them into hunters. What I'd like to do, and what is intentional, that my intentions are to expose them to what it is I love doing, and just hope that there's a thread of interest that they have that I can keep bringing them along on.
Yeah.
And the moment that I see that they're not interested anymore, I'll probably let the thread go and just back off, and maybe they'll come back and I'll be able to. So I just want to be really careful not to force it down their throat, because I don't think that would have worked for me as a kid. If my dad said, Jamie, I want you to be the best rugby player that you can be, and you're going to train all the time, and you're going to do this and that, I would have probably resented that. Or whatever the example is. So I just want to be careful to expose them and let them find the interest in it and want to come along. And ultimately, man, I would love it if fast forward 10 years, and I don't want it to go fast, but just imagine in 10 years' time when they're teenagers, if they're still talking to me and wanting to come camping with me, that will be success.
yeah, definitely, dude. I'm thinking that now. Like, we've got she's 11 weeks old today, and I'm still we're taking her camping for the first time in January. I'm so stoked that we're going to start to introduce her to the wild straight away. But it's definitely something that you almost envision. Like, okay, well, when she's like, what time can I start taking her hunting? Like, is 12 too young or too old? And like, I don't know. It's kind of exciting to think about what happens in 10, 15 years time when they're when they're able to make their own decisions, and will they be willing to come out and do it? And it's quite interesting because you see it a lot in school, for instance. Like, parents will say, well, you have to get this or you have to do that. I like what your dad did with if you want to get this is how you have to do it. Like, use the school I don't know, more so use your gun license as an incentive.
Incentivizing, and I think that's a good way to do it. And if somebody really wants something, then they'll do whatever they can to get it. But I think, look, the timing thing, I think it all comes down to what feels right for you. Just go with your parental gut instinct, and you are the best parent for your kids. No one else can be the best parent for your kids. So, whether someone else thinks 7 years old, Jamie, is way too young, you're foolish, or, Jamie, I took my kids at 2 years and that was fine. I think all the answers are right, because that's what the parent made the decision on, and no one else can make that call.
Yeah. I think something that I've really enjoyed doing is with my nieces and nephews is showing them what archery is. And they're just playing around with my bow, but it sparked their interest so much that my dad has started making them bows and arrows, and they're trying to start make their own bows and arrows and stuff now. And so whenever we go to the farm with them, I'll always take my bow out and we'll sit there for a few hours and I'll just shoot the arrows at the box. And they just absolutely love that. And every time my nephew comes around now, he's like, Matty, I want to shoot the bow and arrow. I'm like, we probably can't do it in the city. Like, it's probably not the best place to be doing it with your accuracy, at least. So it's better to do that at the farm. So I always have to try and make some excuse, but it almost breaks your heart a little bit because you want them to experience it, and it's cool that they're that eager to see it.
That's awesome, man. Like, I would say you've probably got a little follower there, and I would imagine you could probably turn him into something that's able to come with you in time to come and have that ultimate outdoor hunting experience. So, his interest is there.
Yeah.
My kids are these new bows now too. I got them just before Christmas, and they're ones with like the arrow can come through the middle of the bow.
Yeah, cool.
So they don't have the problems with having to balance it all the time and shoot it on it. And so we took those bows on this camping trip, and I was shooting at my target at 50 metres, and the kids were shooting at theirs at like 5 or 6 metres. And, they come and go from that. They'll have an interest in it for a 10-minute period and then won't play with them for 2 days. But when they have an interest, I always, good shot, Marley, close, just grabbing that little thread, trying to bring it further.
Yeah.
And then if they put it down, it's kind of like, yeah, cool. At least they're showing an interest in what I've got an interest in. Because bow hunting, I came and went from it, and I'm now coming back to it after a long time.
Got a little visitor.
Is she not here? Oh, sorry, my daughter Marley's supposed to have a violin lesson.
That's right.
I'll tell you what. She's not here. She's not there, okay. Oh, so you've written me a note. My violin teacher still hasn't come yet. What should I do? I'll tell you what. Why don't you grab your books and read them in the front room and just keep watching out for her? Well, if she doesn't come, that's all right. You can just keep reading. Because you're such a good reader. Oh, you've got thousands of choices. Yeah, don't know where I was going with that.
No, it's good either way. I think that's a good conversation. I think that there's so much there, right? Like sparking the interest, like you said, just pulling the thread lightly rather than going too full hog on it. It's definitely a better way to do it. So let's talk about your move to Western Australia. Did you go straight from New Zealand to Western Australia?
Yeah, so I finished uni in 2007, a master's degree in natural resource management. So it's kind of like working in the environment field. Yeah. And there was just lots of jobs going in Western Australia at the time in mining jobs. Yeah. And I had 2 dogs. Like, I was not planning on going to leave New Zealand. I wanted to stay in New Zealand. I was pretty settled. I had my Mountain Man website. I just started writing for a magazine. I felt like everything I wanted to do was heading in the right direction. I just needed to get a job after I'd finished my master's. And my wife said to me, she was my girlfriend at the time, but she said, Jamie, I want to move to Perth. And I was like, oh, what? Where's Perth? I looked it up. There's no hunting in Perth. That sounds like the worst place to go. Like, everything I read on hunting in Perth was just the total opposite to what I'd got used to and been brought up on in New Zealand. And she wanted to go across because she could see this mining boom continuing. I mean, it started in 2002, 3, 4, and it just kept building and building. By 2007, it was kind of like there was not enough people to do the work over here. So they were recruiting from over east. They were going to New Zealand. They were giving bakers jobs as, truck drivers. People working in a bakery became a truck driver. So there was this real calling for work, and she was the one that said, I'm going to go with or without you. And I really had to think about that because I had Zulu, my 3-year-old German short-haired pointer, across Waimārana that I'd trained up. She was an okay deer dog, I'd say, good at times, and at times she was average. But she still got me deer, and I shot some good stags with her and some chamois. But it was more about having the companion, really. I know what I'm doing. I don't need a dog to tell me where to go in the bush. To be honest, I've very rarely used her as an indicating dog. I just mainly used her as once I'd shot an animal, if it ran into the scrub or the monkey scrub. But, so Lisa wanted to move, which meant I had to either bring the dogs to Perth or sell them or give them away. And I couldn't bear the thought of bringing both of the dogs. The other one was a 1-year-old purebred German short-haired pointer that I bought for Elisa, and that was really a duck dog. His name was Tonic. And I just couldn't bear the thought of bringing them across to Perth and having such a different lifestyle to what they had in New Zealand. So I actually gave Zulu to a mate from down in Wanaka who was a hunter, and then Zulu went to a fly fisherman up in Nelson. And I tell you what, man, I cried so much when I gave those dogs up. I've never been so upset in my life. To this day, I mean, if the kids, for some reason, something happened to them, that would absolutely crush me. But up until now, giving those dogs up actually broke me as a person for about 3 months. I I had to stop looking at photos. I had to take photos down. I couldn't even talk about the dogs without like that whole week after I'd actually given the dogs up, both of them. I couldn't stop fucking crying.
Yeah.
I just realised I've done it, and I'm moving to Perth. You know, Lisa, you do realise that I've just given up my dogs, and serious about our relationship. So let's pursue it. But I'm sacrificing a lot here. And look, it's a big sacrifice, and I think I've come to terms with it now. But for those first couple of years, I was really struggling with the flatness, the heat, the lack of hunting opportunities. I wasn't part of a community anymore. I felt like I was part of a hunting community in New Zealand, and in Perth I really just felt like there was no one that even hunted. People shot or went spotlighting and did all that stuff, but I was never interested in that.
Yeah.
I had people invite me out to their properties to spotlight, and I did that a couple of times and never actually went back. It wasn't my buzz.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems with people doing it. It's just not
what you enjoy.
Doesn't interest me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was hard, but the work. See, what I do think was the good thing is that the opportunities in the career and the financial savings that we've been able to make, which has allowed us to now set our family up. And a property here, we've got a property in New Zealand. We've got investments. We're doing well, and I feel like that's a better outcome than being in New Zealand, living the greatest lifestyle that you could, but struggling financially.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for my wife. So I think you just got to remember, I have to keep reminding myself, it's about the big picture, and eventually it will come full circle again, and I'll be back in New Zealand, and the hunting will be at my fingertips again.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me focused and sane. And there's this flag on the horizon. I always feel like there needs to be a goal, or there needs to be a target, which is, get to a point and return back to New Zealand. Now that flag on the horizon continues to get further away. Like we get to the point where we're going to move back, and then it's like we reevaluate, look at our situation. We've got a young daughter who's got some challenges. We've pushed the flag another couple of years, but the flag's always still getting put up, right? We're still working towards coming back.
Yeah.
It's a matter of when, and I don't have the answer to that.
But I think it's good to have that in the back of your mind, like, hey, whether it's 5 or 10 years or whatever it is, you know you're going back to New Zealand. You've got the ability to step back into what you had. And I think there's so much in that, like you said, moving to a new location and not having that community feel anymore. It's such a massive thing. Like connection with human interaction is massive. And obviously you get connection, but like going to work every day, you get connection, but it might not be it's not the connection that you're really desiring. And I was having a conversation with my wife the other day, and she kind of said, like, well, what needs of yours aren't getting met? And I said, adventure right now. Like I spent pretty much, I think it was from August onwards, because of we knew you were having the baby sometime soon. So I pretty much didn't have that month away. And then it's now December. And so it's pretty much, we hadn't done anything, like no weekends away or done anything like that. And I'm someone who loves to go to the beach or love to go out to the farm. And it's a 3-hour drive to the farm or an hour drive to the beach. So it's something that we do quite regularly. And just not having that little thing, like Madeline's incredible, my little baby. She's absolutely awesome, and she's given me such light in life. But at the same time, it's funny that once you don't have that thing in your life, it just gives you that little bit of void that you just almost feel like needs to be filled. So since we've gone to the beach twice on this little like Christmas break, and it's just crazy how much it kind of fills your cup back up, like just being out in the wild again. How long was it for you before you kind of got back into a proper, like before you found something in Western Australia?
Well, I never really have found something in Western Australia until the YouTube channel started up, and I've had people reaching out and introducing themselves, and then we get chatting, and then I've been invited to go camping with some people, like a guy, Jim, and he's got a young girl called Elodie. Jim, if you're listening, man, big props. And another guy, Joel and Amy, who are just about to have their first child in March. And again, Joel, if you're listening, big props. They reached out and said, do you want to come camping? Do you want to come onto our property? You can shoot for foxes, or bring your bow down and go for pigs or deer. And like that's given me something to do in WA again. But again, it's still that balancing act, like I feel like life's just this juggle when you've got so many balls in the air and you don't want to drop any ball. And I've got hunting as an interest. The kids have got all these activities. I still want to stay fit, go to the gym. I want to be able to still arm wrestle and compete professionally at that. I still want to go on holiday with the family. You want to do all these things,
fit all in.
And so the opportunities to go hunting are quite few and far between. Yeah. But in saying that, I make the most of those opportunities, though, and that's I think anyone listening can understand if they've got family. It's like, well, I get 2 trips a year, or maybe it's a fishing trip, and you just want to make the most of it. You want to have a great time with good people, or cover lots of ground, put yourselves in an opportunity where you can either take an animal or have a close encounter, and you still come back with your cup fully charged.
Yeah.
And that for me, I think is what bit me so badly as a kid, was that I would go away, spend time in the bush pursuing wild animals, and I would come back like laser charged. I would be so full of energy, enthusiasm, and couldn't wait to do the next one. And of course, living in New Zealand, you just went the next weekend, and it just like an avalanche. Started with this small rolling interest, and by the end of my university days, man, I was this avalanche. I was hunting so much that I had no other balls in the air. It was just hunting. And that wasn't healthy either, but at the time, it gave me such meaning, and it gave me such positive feelings that's all I wanted to do, almost at the expense of my relationship with Elise, which, you got to pinch yourself. You got to be like, you got to realise, is that the only thing you want to do in your life? And if that is the only thing you want to do in your life, then do it, but don't expect to have too many balls in the air. But if you want to be able to do it, and you've got other interests or other commitments and responsibilities, then it requires balance, and I've found that hard. But in WA, coming back to your question, I felt like Perth gave me balance. Even though I didn't want it or I wasn't ready for it, I felt like, looking back on it, it's maybe a better thing for me as an individual. Like, I'm really strongly driven. I've got I don't have impulsive traits, but like I get these, I just can't move off an idea. I have to do it. Like, I've got a backpack plan hunt like next year's elk and Idaho, 3 weeks, like come hell or high water, even if Andre Alaparty, my mate that's coming with me, pulls out, I'm going to Idaho and I'm going to hunt. I'll even hunt solo. I'll do not an Adam Green tree like hunting with bears and stuff, but I'll go solo, and it'll be hardcore. I don't have any problems with that, but it's just like I have these fixations that I can't let go. And I think if you've got that personality style, you just have to be careful you don't let those fixations totally outweigh the other parts of your life.
Yeah, ages and stages, strokes and folks, right? Like you have to pick your battles, definitely. I think I'm pretty similar, right? Like I'll get my eyes set on something. I'm just so focused to try to get that. And it's funny because like hearing you talk about it just before is literally like, fuck, that's me at times. Like definitely that's exactly the same way I respond. And one big goal I've had that I still haven't actually got is a red deer, getting a red deer down with the bow. And I mean, that's just been on my mind like nonstop. And something I was saying before Madeline was born, like it's almost like a coming to age for me. Like there's something that I kept saying to Stace, like it's just something that I feel I need to accomplish for me to be able to progress as a human almost, which is crazy. Like that's the kind of weight that we put on it, but it's almost like it's got so much connected to it right now for me. Yeah. But really, it's another experience to get out in the bush again. But yeah. It's interesting.
Mate, I can imagine when you get that red deer, whether it's a hind, a yearling, a stag, when you get that red deer, it will mean so much more than if you had got that red deer in your first few months of trying.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but yeah, it's interesting you say that because red deer, I find that they're probably one of the more common animals, like in terms of population in New Zealand, but also spatially, like the coverage across New Zealand's public land and mountains. Red deer are more prolific than any other deer species. So red deer are easier to come by, and I'm not saying they're easier to kill or to bow hunt, but the opportunities, the probability of you having an encounter is higher. Mm-hmm. So when I go back in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be spending 10 days there. I'll do a bit of camping with the kids and my parents, and then I'm going to go do a backpack hunt with one of my cousins in the Uraweras. for pigs and red deer. And I've actually never shot a red deer with the bow either. I've killed pigs with the bow. I've killed tahr and fallow, but not red deer. So I think with the bow, any encounter, whether it's a goat or a rabbit, like killing something with the bow is a tough challenge.
Yeah.
And the connection with having to close that distance, and I can't recall if you're a trad bow or a bow.
No, I've got both, but I use my wheels when I'm hunting.
Yeah. I take my hat off to trad bow hunters.
Oh, definitely.
That truly is mastering the art of stealth, stalking, intimacy with the animal. There was a guy that you had being podcasted the other day. I listened to a bit of it, and I need to go back to it and listen to the rest. His name was Adam
Kavanagh.
I thought it was, long hair.
Yeah.
There's a photo of him that I saw a couple of years ago, and it's flashed up a few times on Instagram over the past, where he's like creeping around with no shirt on, almost just total traditional style.
Yeah.
Well, I think he wears bare feet too, and maybe that's his hunting style, but he's creeping around this tree, and there's this massive sambar stag right on the outside. And it's like, man, that is truly hunting. Like, that is true hunting, And I think that's probably why I've got this interest in bow hunting again, because I don't have an ego. I don't need to kill an animal to feel like a hunter anymore. I am a hunter whether I take something home or I don't. And I think because I've got that attitude, I feel more comfortable just being a bow hunter where, let's face it, as good a hunter as you are, the opportunities to make a successful kill are less than it is with rifle. And I'm okay with that. But dial it back 10 years when I first bought the bow, I was writing for a magazine. I felt there was this pressure that was created by me, but also by the fact that I was writing for a magazine where you had to produce articles, show stuff. You had to have something to show to say. And I feel like that was, that's just a misconception that I had in my brain. But I wasn't ready to fully commit to the bow 10 years ago because the encounters were too few.
Yeah.
But now I'm willing to go to the bow, and I won't stay with the bow forever. I've got this real interest in using the rifle because I like reloading, and I like the calibers that I use, and I have a range of different calibers that have a purpose. So 222 that I'll use for certain things, 2506 at 22 to 50, 7mm mag at 3006. I still like playing around with different calibers, and that aspect of reloading and following the process right the way through to taking an animal. It's kind of like that journey has started months before I went out into the field, and that's the kind of thing I like about hunting too. Is even though I get 2 trips a year, maybe 1 trip a year, or maybe it's 3, those trips in the year are maybe for 5 days, but the hunt is only like 5% of the whole process. The other 95% is all the lead up, all the training, all the planning, all the poring over maps, looking at information, ringing people, trying to get intel. It's this massive lead up so that when you finally get in the field, like most of it's kind of already mapped out and planned, and in the field you're just sort of making some adjustments based on what the wind's doing or where the sign is. Mm-hmm. I'm committed to the area. I've walked in for a day. I'm not walking out to go somewhere else.
No, exactly.
So I don't know. Backpack hunting is, like you said, you want adventure in your life. Have you ever backpack hunted?
I haven't yet, and that's definitely on the cards. Like, it's something I wanted to do. So I've always had a big fascination with just being dropped somewhere with enough water, and that's it. Like, okay, go fend for yourself. I'm not sure if that will ever happen, but backpack hunting is pretty much as close to it as you'll get. So I've been invited. Yeah. I've been invited to go on one down in Victoria, which I'd love to do. It might be definitely not next year, but maybe the following year. It might be something I can make happen. But yeah, something like that would be incredible.
Yeah, I think if adventure is what you're craving or you want in your life, then backpack hunting will certainly fill that cup. It's even overflow. Like, I really feel like once you've backpack hunted, it'll make other forms of hunting really difficult. Because even though you might not see as many animals, and I'm going to be brutally honest, I truly feel like the number of deer in those Alps in Victoria are much fewer than farm fringe. It's just a fact that the farm fringe is all this improved pasture and the density of deer is much higher in those areas.
Yeah.
They probably are more nocturnal because there's fringe, people shoot, and there's farmers, and there's constantly moving traffic, so they're more prone to be nocturnal. But I feel like the encounters in the backcountry are much fewer than they would be if you're in the farm fringe. But because you're in such magnificent terrain with dramatic, topography, bird life, everything about being out there in the wild, natural wilderness just makes the backpack hunt, even if you don't see an animal for a whole day or a trip. Some people go and don't see a sambar for, maybe their first few times, or maybe they don't see a sambar and shoot a sambar for several years, but they're still enjoying going out there because of what that natural landscape offers their inner soul. Really. I mean, it's charging you right up. Yeah. And, that sense of adventure when you go on those trips is second to none, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely, dude. I mean, it's a lot of... I didn't really understand going abroad to go hunting for a long time, and now I'm starting to grasp the real understanding of the adventure and the actual experience of it. Like I was always at the thought, well, you're going hunting for the meat rather than you're going hunting for the experience. But now, after doing it it's almost been 2 years for me now, it's like, oh, I understand it now. Like I do have a desire to now go to the States, and it's like you create envy from people like yourself who's going over to the States to do like a big elk hunt. Like, of all the things, I think that's the one that probably interests me the most. But then I'm also of the mindset of, well, hold up, if you're going to drop, say, $10K to get over there and do it all, is it going to be an issue if you don't get it? Because that's what you have to prep yourself for, right? Like,
yeah, true. Look, that's a really good question, and I've thought about that in my brain too, because I'm really frugal or prudent with money. I like to be cautious about how I spend money, which is why typically if you look at my history in hunting on the website or on YouTube, like I don't upgrade gear very often. Mm-hmm. I've stuck with the head for a very long time. I'm not one of those people that just constantly needs to buy the latest toys. Mm-hmm. I'm quite comfortable to get by on gear that worked for me 15 years ago, and as long as it's still functional, then I'm going to keep using it.
Yeah.
Now, I have just gone and bought a whole lot of Kuyu gear, which is really expensive and really lightweight, and I'm really excited about that because, like, just a couple of conversations ago when I said I was really focused, when I decided I wanted to do elk hunting in 2020, I decided that in the end of 2018. It was kind of like elk 2020. Didn't quite know where, but it was just like elk 2020. And everything that I've been working towards with the bow this year, we're still in 2019. This year is all for the sambar, was all kind of leading into what I'm going to do next year, which is elk hunting. And next year, I just want to almost exclusively use the bow leading into that elk hunt, so that it's kind of like, Jamie, there's no other option. Everything is about closing that distance to within 40 metres as a minimum, and then closer. Which is why, stupidly, I got within 35 metres of that stag on that last backpack hunt with Dirk, with the bow, and saw it. And I should have just shotted it from where I was on the other side of the river. Because I had that river making so much noise, I just instantly thought, I can get closer, and I want to get closer because I want a sure kill here.
Yeah.
Because the bow offers doubt, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the rifle, it would have just been a shot without any question, but with the bow, maybe I should have just taken that shot at 35 metres, but I wanted to close to within 20 metres, and I think I've got a lot of learning and growth to do with the bow before going elk hunting next year, and any chance I can, even with kangaroos, just sneaking in on them. Mm-hmm. I'm not shooting them with the bow, but sneaking in on them and trying to get past them to where maybe there's deer bedded down is stuff that I want to keep practicing and harnessing for next year elk hunt. But I sort of deviated, but coming back to the gear thing, like this Kuyu gear, the reason I bought all that Kuyu gear was to have the lightest weight that I could, because I carry too much gear. Mm-hmm. Camera gear I carry in is way too much, but I don't want to not capture the hunt either. So there's this need to reduce weight, but I don't want to let go of camera gear and some of the clothing gear. I'm already packing fairly minimal. I could probably pack less, but with Kuyu now, I've literally halved my weight with the same quality of gear.
So crazy,
and,
right?
And it's not the weight, but it's also the space. Like those things squash up into tiny little, like morsels that you could eat. They're so small.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about having the opportunity to backpack hunt for 3 weeks, because I'm going to go for 3 weeks and just carry that bag around, which is hopefully less than 25 kilos, and getting less as we go. Mm-hmm. And you don't have the luxury of shooting an animal like you do in Australia and just having a meat animal at camp. That's kind of like that's your tag. But, I'm sure between Andre and I, between having a mule deer tag, I'll probably buy a bear tag, even though I've never had an interest in shooting bears. There's just something compelling about, I'm going all the way over there. The bear tags are $16. Every biologist that I talked to on the phone, because I've rung a lot of people, I've spoken to a lot of biologists, done some research, and it's like, wow, there's a lot of bears. The biologists are saying it's important. The reason why the bear tags are so cheap is because they want people to hunt them.
Want them gone,
and carry up that population control. And let's face it, with a bow, you're hardly going to dent a population with the bow. The success rate's 8% or 10% at best. So, between Andre and I having a mule deer tag, a bear tag, a wolf tag, because we'll probably howl in some wolves, and they're a real problem in Idaho at the moment, and an elk tag, and he'll have maybe the same, I hope there's going to be meat somewhere at some point.
You don't say. Yeah, definitely.
To sort of prop up the food stores, because we don't want to carry 3 weeks of food. I've never carried more than 2 weeks of food, and that is hard going, carrying 2 weeks of freeze-dried food. It's hard to carry, but it's also hard to eat. 2 weeks of freeze-dried food. It's not a normal food source. I don't care how flavoursome they are. After about 4 or 5 days of that same stuff, it gets tiring.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always, that's definitely something that I would, I think, probably find a bit interesting, is going out and taking that style of food out with me. It's something I always look after, is my nutrition, and make sure that I'm eating really well. Even on the hunts I've gone on so far, 3 or 4 day hunts, 5 day hunts, whatever it's been, it's always been you can take an esky with you. So a backpack hunt would just be a whole new experience for that as well. Yeah,
the thing about backpack hunting is even a seasoned hunter probably still comes back from a trip and is like, I'm not taking that again, or I needed that. It's this constant refinement that happens throughout your hunting life time, and I haven't quite mastered exactly what I want to take every single time, because the hunt dictates different terrain or different equipment, or if you're hunting tahr, the gear that you take for tahr is very different to the gear you'd take on a sika hunt in the North Island. So you never quite get settled, and you'll have some base core things that you'll always take, and some things that you would never negotiate on. But there's definitely, there's stuff that you're constantly trying to work out. Do I really need this? Do you want this? And if you're backpack hunting for your first time, you'll make a lot of mistakes, and you'll learn from them, and you'll want to do it next time differently, and it'll just keep going like that for your journey, I reckon.
What's one piece of advice do you think you could give someone trying to go for a backpack hunt for the first time?
My best bit of advice, because I spend so much doing it myself, is look and pore over maps and understand the terrain you're going to go on first, and do your research on a location so that you go in there ready to just execute, basically. You've done 90% of the thinking, and you arrive for your one trip a year. Make sure you have selected a good location and you're familiar with it. Maybe it's not a great location, but just totally understand your terrain before you get there, so that you maximise your opportunity. And then once you're there, be confident and back your decision-making and push yourself, but don't take unnecessary risks, but do push yourself, because backpack hunting, if you've never done it before, it's really easy for that little naysayer in your brain to start making excuses for you.
Yeah.
And then you start listening to it, and then it's kind of telling you, I don't think you should go any further. I think you should go back. And I think it's too hard. I think you got a blister. I think maybe you need water. I think maybe you need to go back and get water at camp. Push past that, and that'll help you grow. There's a really interesting video I just watched the other day for the first time. I don't know how I didn't see it earlier, from Hilldog in New Zealand. He's doing a He's an Australian, for any of you that don't know who Hilldog is. He's an Australian hunter from Victoria, very recognisable character because he's got a beard the size of Santa Claus, and he hunts sambar with a rifle, and he goes to New Zealand I think he goes over there for a year and films his hunting experience in and around Wanaka and Queenstown, down south. And he does a backpack hunt, and I got the impression it was his first backpack hunt for New Zealand, and he's carrying around like a week or something of food and gear. It's a pack that's full, and he's quite a small guy, but he's really struggling with the mental challenges more so than physical. But I'm sure the physical challenges were wearing his mental
down.
capacity.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's Christmas time, so he wanted to be with family, and all his family were home, and mentally, that little naysayer in his brain, you could clearly say it was hard for him to push through it.
Yeah.
But credit to him, he pushed through it. Like he got through the emotion. He probably had a few tears on the hill. I really was expecting. I didn't want to fast forward, but I thought, I wonder if I fast forward to the end, am I going to see him like at a McDonald's or something? Just have to give it up. But I watched the whole thing through, and he climbs to the tops. He gets to the tops, the weather starts to, it's about to change the next day. He's questioning whether he should be up there. Then he sees a chamois, and then it's kind of like all those doubts about that naysayer are gone. He's focused on the chamois. He shoots the chamois, and it's his first chamois that he gets. And like that was, watching that backpack hunt was probably a real cold reality for pretty much anyone that does it for their first time. And has to go through those challenges and those excuses or those negative thoughts start to creep into your brain and ruin your backpack hunt. I mean, you're out there having your adventure, and there's doubt creeping in and making you second-guess yourself, which is sometimes not good. If it's a safety issue, then I think listen to that voice. But if it's just the naysayer in your brain making excuses for you, then cast that aside.
I don't know about you, but I think, because you're definitely a gym goer as well, I think that definitely helps to build a lot of mental resilience. Like, I've often gone out with people who have no interest in going to the gym, and they want to stop it seems like almost every kilometre. They wanted to have a quick rest. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, come on, let's keep moving. And it's almost like you definitely see that mental capacity drop a little bit quicker than say someone like you or I who go to the gym and battle through those things every single day. Have you kind of seen the same thing?
Yeah, maybe, although it's hard for me to say because I've always just been a battler anyway. If I was unfit, I reckon I'd still just battle through it. But saying that, I do truly believe being fit and being in good physical condition just allows you to cover terrain more with ease, and therefore you are not having to second-guess yourself like, oh, man, I'm feeling tired, or, oh, I've got a headache now, or whatever it is. Like, if you're physically in a good shape, you can have a more comfortable hunt, and because you're able to have a more comfortable hunt, you're more confident. Because you're more confident, you're probably going to make better decisions, and you're going to cover more ground, you're going to see more animals. Like, I do think being fit allows for a more successful, gives you more opportunities to be successful. But in saying that, funny you should ask, because I remember watching a video on YouTube again with Cameron Haynes and Roy. Roy was one of his best mates.
Yeah,
and I
passed away.
Where he died.
Yeah,
he died on a Alaskan.
It was a goat hunt, I think.
Goat hunt?
Sheep hunt, probably.
Shame. Anyway, just watching this guy, Roy, he was not a fit guy.
No, exactly.
And it's like polar opposites. Cameron Haynes, the guy does super challenging things physically to his body every single day just to keep himself sharp for elk season. And then you have Roy, who's like, I don't think he goes to the gym at all, but he had that resilience to just push through mentally. He was been hurting physically. I know what those hunts are like. I've not hunted in those mountains over in America, but I'm telling you, Americans that are listening, New Zealand will kick your ass.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, New Zealand will kick your ass. The Southern Alps will kick anyone's ass. I don't care how strong, fit, experienced you are. If you hunt in those Alps, they will kick your ass. And it's a good place to go to test yourself. And watching that guy, Roy, just battle through in that terrain, I was like, that is true character right there, because he is not as able to move as nimbly. He's heavier, and yet he wasn't complaining. He was hard up the back of Cameron. It was kind of like, he was just right behind him. He wasn't left behind, and that's because I think he has just a true hard spirit. Or he's gone now, but he just had a hard character that was willing to push through, and that's that mental strength. So I think even though he doesn't go to the gym, you can still have that mental strength without being a physically strong guy. But I do truly believe it helps. Being strong, being in good shape helps.
Yeah, definitely, dude. No, that's very interesting. I wasn't trying to say the opposite. I'm not trying to say that you definitely don't have the resilience, but I feel like it definitely helps to build the resilience a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we're running probably a little bit short on time because I know you have to get going soon, but this has been a really cool conversation, man. We've covered a lot just in general, and I've barely touched on my notes, to be honest, which is great. It's good. It's probably the best way that it should be. Maybe let's talk a little bit about your prep that you've been doing for your 2020 elk hunt. Like, what you said, you've had a lot of phone calls going on. You've already started looking into the maps and stuff. Because it's an over-the-counter, does it make it a little bit harder because you don't really know where you're going to be?
Yeah, it's totally. It's just a big empty box with questions in it. Well, the questions are kind of slowly getting answered now, but it started off with, okay, Andre, where do we want to go hunting? And it was kind of like, well, okay, what do we want to do? What is it we want to achieve? Do we just want to hunt elk and pay for a guided service where you can shoot the best elk or have the chance to shoot the best elk in the country, or do we want a true experience? And if you haven't got it by now, my style is not to take the easy route or do the thing that would give you the best chance of success. You talk about $10,000 is kind of what it costs to do an over-the-counter backpack hunt once you take into account all the fees, all of the flights, accommodation, all of that stuff, right? Yeah. And I see that as that's $10,000 for the opportunity to hunt elk. It's not to kill an elk, it's to hunt elk. Mm-hmm. And if I don't succeed, then I'm still going to have experienced that hunt. Yeah. It's cost me $10,000, but that, money's money, right? And I work really hard, so I don't see that as a problem not having the chance for success. But we started with, what is it that we want to do? Well, we do want to experience a true public land, free rein, over-the-counter backpack hunt. So then straight away that ruled out a whole lot of states that don't offer over-the-counter guaranteed hunt. You've got to put in a ballot or you've got to have points and stuff. So it just kind of wiped out a whole lot of states straight away. And we were looking at Colorado, Idaho, and Oregon. We did look into Montana for a while, Montana. Mm-hmm. And we sort of moved away from Montana and moved back down towards Colorado and Idaho, and Oregon a little bit, but more so Colorado and Oregon and Idaho. And the conversations that I had with Andre kind of led us down towards landing on a few units that met our general interest. So what we've been looking for is wilderness areas, which means no full drive or ATV or vehicles, all that stuff. Like, we don't have one. But also, even if we were hunting in New Zealand, or the way I hunt sambar, I don't go into areas where you can take full drives. To a point you can. Beyond that, I want to get remote, and that's to get away from people and do it hard, because I like the challenge, but also because I know that I'm less likely to bump into other human beings, and that's what we want as a team. So straight away, it ruled out areas. So it's kind of like, you start with this big picture, right? And then there's this map gets smaller and smaller, and then there's little parcels here and there. And then it just came down to, okay, well, what do we want to hunt for? Well, that area has mainly that. That area has mainly that. That area doesn't have any of that. Okay, so it rules out. And we landed on about 5 or 6 areas that do tick all of our boxes. And we could actually go to any one of those 6 spots and probably still get that feeling of this meets all our criteria. There's all the species you want to go in for it. And we were so close to going Colorado for a while, but the thing about Colorado is that it's got more elk in it, but it gets a lot of pressure as well. Mm-hmm. And the altitude I've never been at that altitude before to know whether we would have issues at 4 kilometres above sea level.
What's New Zealand get to?
Oh, most of the hunting I did was around 2,000 metres at most.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have gone 2,200 at a very push along the main ridge, but most of the time, most of my hunting would have been between 1,200 metres and 1,800 metres. Like, that's a fairly stock standard, get to the elevation band above the monkey scrub and glass up onto those ridges and main spurs. And anywhere in between there is kind of where I was finding animals. Very rarely did I hunt the river flats. But over there, it's kind of like Denver. Is that the one in Colorado? The main city, Denver, yeah. That's at 1,500 metres. So you land at 1,500 metres elevation, and then you drive up into the high country. And so where we were looking at going was like 13,000 feet, which is 4 kilometres, to get to the ridges. And the style that Andre and I want to hunt is we want to climb up and over ridges. Like, we want to go into different valleys beyond, like way beyond where the car parks are, which may or may not be the successful way to hunt. But I actually don't care how other people go and maybe they get animals on farm fringe and do that. That's not what we're going there for. If we wanted to do that, we'd just pay extra money and go with a guided hunt on farm fringe. We want to go and experience remote. And part of me doesn't feel sure about doing the big climbs over those mountains at that altitude and knowing what my body's going to do. So we're going to take a more safer bet and go Idaho into just a little bit south of the Panhandle, but it's like in that main range that spills down from, it's still Rocky Mountains. It's the Rocky Mountain belt that comes from Canada down and sort of carries on into the state's southern south of Idaho. And each of the units that I looked at, I'd look at it's called Filtering 2.0. That's an app online on the internet that you can pay a subscription fee to, and it allows you to look at all the units and understand what the population in an area is based on biologists doing their surveys every year, the hunting rates that are, the number of hunters that have gone in, rifle, archery, muzzle loader, and what their success rates are, the number of 6-point bulls taken versus cows, the ratio of cow to bulls, like all these stats need in this database. And I like, this is all me doing it. Andre's got a real, he's just different to me. He's kind of like, Jimmy, you tell me where we're going, brother, and I'll be right there behind you or alongside me. But I've always taken the lead on these trips. Like I can't let go of the control. I feel like I need to be in control. Yeah. But the other part of it is that I actually love it. I actually love it. Yeah. And I'm good at it. I love information and disseminating it and bringing it into a spreadsheet. So we've got the spreadsheet with all these tabs and a summary sheet that's got all of our criteria and the areas, and we've given them weightings. And then we score them out of 1 to 10, 10 being it meets every bit of our criteria, 1 being no good. And so we've given all of our criteria, we've scored all of our criteria for the different areas we want to hunt, and it's given us a quantitative number that says this is the area based on all of your scoring where you think you should go. So that's what we've used. So it's kind of like we've got a complex decision to make. We're spending $10,000 each to go to America, to an area we've never been, and hunt for an animal we've never hunted using a weapon that I have hardly used. I'm very proficient with the bow, but I'm not so. And so it's a complex question we're asking ourselves. So we need a complex way to break that down. So the spreadsheet helps us disseminate all that information. And by ringing the biologist, it helps me confirm, that the health of the herd's good. Has there been fires in the area? And I'm really open with these biologists. I'm like, my name's Jamie and I'm from New Zealand. I live in Australia. I want to hunt elk. They're like, have you done it before? No, I haven't. They're like, oh, really? Okay. Well, so what are you planning to do? And I'm like, well, I'm planning to do this. They're like, that's a really big plan. I'm like, look, I don't expect you to agree with me, but just hear me out, because I do know what I'm doing. I just need to verify some things, really. And so I'm using it as a sounding board. And I've had some really interesting feedback where some of the guys have been like, man, you're making me excited with this plan. I've never heard anyone talk about doing a trip like that. Most people take horses or mules or llamas in or whatever. And all I can think back to is like, you know what? This is just like New Zealand, but more open with bears and wolves. Not that I should scorn at that, but it's like the terrain is no different to New Zealand. It's just that we're in America, and everything, instead of it being on a northern face because it's warm, maybe it's on a southern face, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe they like to be on the colder face because that's where the feed is. So we'll be looking onto northern faces which are cold, as opposed to southern faces here, because everything's reversed up there. So there's all these things that I'm asking and verifying when I make phone calls, and it's just helping us like put the piece of the puzzle together. And now the piece of the puzzle's pretty much done. We've got our routes planned. The only thing that would change it now is if there's a fire that rips through their summer, not our summer, but their summer, and just burns a whole lot of country. I don't know what else would stop us from going in.
So when do you actually get to buy a tag? Like, do you have to fly into the country to be able to get that?
We can buy the tags now online, but over-the-counter tags in Idaho don't usually get sold out pretty much for a non-resident. So we're going to hold on. We're going to not buy them until we actually book our flights. And Andre's just had a baby, his second baby. So he's as soon as he's ready to buy his tickets, then that's when I'll buy the tags.
Yeah.
I'll just move this because I think the sun's coming around. But yeah, so everything's looking pretty good. We're going to fly over the end of August, and we're going to be there, I think, 3 or 4 days before the season opens, and we'll just pack into an area, and we'll just glass, get intel, make a plan. I do think that we're going to be too early for them to be bugling. Like, I'm just kind of treating it like a red stag hunt, where we've had a lot of success in the early rut for red stags with real mature stags roaring early. And or put it this way, maybe they're not ready to roar, but just being able to roar at them and coax them up, they've started roaring, and they've usually been big mature stags. So I'm kind of hoping that we might be able to, and my calling is woeful at the moment, but I'll master that before I go over. I don't mean it in an arrogant way, but I'm going to do my best to be able to communicate with them to an extent where I can at least prompt a response or maintain a response for Andre. I don't know if he's practicing for me. he better be practicing for me, because I don't want to be the one having to call and hunt. That would just, I think that makes things really difficult.
Yeah. How hard is the calling with all the devices they've got?
The reed, surprisingly, the reed wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
It's a mouth tab with like a flap that just squeezes air through, and you use your tongue to create tension or loosen it off to create the sound from, going low and up. But to be honest, when I went to Fiordland back in 2006, I just remember like bugling to them with my hands, like like that. And I just thought maybe I could get away with bugling through my hands, but everything I see on those American shows, those guys are all using bugle horns. So I'm kind of just trying to embrace the way they do it, because they all know how to best do it.
Yeah.
But I feel like my calling is really not erratic, but really inconsistent. Like I can't get the same. Like there'll be maybe for 10 goes, I might get one that sounds good, and then the other 9 don't sound good.
Yeah.
But what I need to get to is like being able to make that one sound good every time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not quite like a fox whistle, right? Like you can stuff up a fox whistle and still get away with it, whereas an elk, it's kind of...
I think my fox whistle's no good either. But But look, to be honest, I actually don't plan on doing a lot of calling unless, well, no, I shouldn't say that, but moments of me think, let's get up high, glass. Let's find where the animals are and glass and glass and glass and work out, do we put on a stalk or do we get in close and then rake a tree and then try and coax an animal out from the group and put someone in a shooting position? I think we'll try all those options, but I don't just want to run around bugling all the time, because I've done that with the reds during the roar, and sometimes that's actually not helped at all, and I've wondered whether maybe I should just shut up and wait till I find them. And once you find them, whether that's fresh sign, and that's actually one of the things I don't see a lot of when watching YouTube videos in America, is a lot of those elk hunters, they seem to be locating them with a bugle, and very rarely are they stalking fresh tracks. It's not a skill that I've noticed a lot of, whereas, you know, guys in New Zealand and even in Victoria for Australians, people notice what's happening on the ground and seeing, you know, the sign, the fresh track. Some are doing it, but a lot of them, I don't know if they're doing it.
Are you watching like Hushin and Born and Raised, like those videos?
Yeah, I watch a lot of those guys. There's lots of others too, though, and I don't remember all their channels, but Top Priority is really good. I enjoy watching those guys. Western Productions, Cameron Haynes. I've got Donnie Vincent's DVDs and stuff. He's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of other channels too, but it just, I don't know, when we're there, I just want to try every tactic in the book, because I think that we're at a great disadvantage not being locals and not understanding elk behaviour or what they feed on. I've got no idea what they feed on. But between now and August, those are those parts of the box with all these questions that I'll just keep chipping away at. So I'll find books, I'll get them out of the library, I'll buy them, and just slowly piece that bit of the puzzle together so that when we get in the field, I kind of feel like I'm as prepared as I can be. Now I just need the moons and stars to align where an animal comes within a certain distance and it's an animal that I want to take.
Yeah.
And I hit it, kill it, and then, you know.
What sort of guidelines are you putting around the animal in regards to what size, and like is there a certain head that you're chasing? Is there just a certain size body you're chasing?
Oh, look, I'd be lying if I didn't say I want to get a trophy stick. Like, that's a long way to go for a meat animal or a young stag, a young spike. But I guess I have to be willing to come away from that without that as a result too, because if the chances are only sort of 8%, 10% at best for an archer to take an animal from an area, just an animal, let alone a trophy. Taking a trophy 6-point bull would be ultimately what I'd like to do, but that might be 3 or 4% chance. So, and I don't have the whole season to fill that tag. I've only got 3 weeks. So I would be okay. I'd be okay with passing up animals for the first part of the trip. Towards the end of the trip, it really comes down to how far in we are and how much effort it would be to get an animal out. But I don't think I would just shoot a young animal on the last few days and then pack a whole young animal out just for the sake of killing an animal for that tag. I'd rather just be like, here you go, thanks for the elk experience, you've got your tag back, Idaho.
Because rules of Idaho, you have to pack the whole animal out. Like, obviously you can leave bones, but the all meat has to go, right?
Yeah, you do. And so, you know, Andre and I are training really hard. Like, I've got no qualms about packing an animal out in pieces, but it might take days. If we're in quite a long way, it might take a ferry of 3 or 4 goes coming backwards and forwards to get that out. And we just, like, I'm really respectful that if Andre gets if I got a deer and Andre hadn't got one, then I would say to Andre, don't help pack it out with me, because this is your hunt too, right?
Yeah.
Or let me do the packing out. And I'd like to think it would be the same the other way around. If Andre gets a deer first up, and I actually would like to be the caller initially, and put Andre in a situation and then, you know, let him pack his animal out and then carry on, and hopefully he gets back to be able to start helping out with the butte. We've also talked about and thrown around ideas. We haven't landed on a supplier yet to be able to come into this area, because we're going off trails. We're not even on a trail. We're going to start on a trail for a few miles, they call it, and then we're off, and we don't see a trail for the whole time. We're just on ridges. And when I spoke to the Bodge, he's like, oh, man, I don't know if they'll even get horses up there type thing. And I was like, well, what about llamas? You know, aren't they more alpine? He's like, oh, most of them will just pack to a trailhead. You'll have to get the elk to a trailhead, and then they'll come out. And they'll take it from the trail. So we're thinking maybe we can make contact through our in-reaches. Like, we'll organise in advance, organising, say, 3 llamas to get delivered to us by a person on a certain day, just using our Garmin in-reaches as a way to communicate, saying, we've shot an elk, I've already paid a deposit, my name's Jamie, we spoke earlier in the year type thing. Can you come to this trail? We'll meet you here, and just pack the animal maybe halfway, or maybe it's 3/4. We're really not sure, but we're still toying with that idea of using pack horses to get something to pack stuff out.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to be able to get straight back into the hill and help Andre, or I'd like him to come back and help me.
I mean, you're talking about 250 kilos of meat, right? Like, especially if you get one of those big 6-point balls, it's not like a small amount. It's a lot of weight.
Yeah, mate. I would be smiling in pain, grimacing happily for 4 days if I shot a 6-point mature bull. I would happily bleed and sweat for 4 days to pack that animal out, even though I know, like, the hunt only really starts, or the effort or the work starts once you've killed an animal. To be able to go through that journey and pack that animal out, I'm sure I will look back on it and see that as a great growth opportunity as a person. Yeah, I really would.
Oh, dude, that's incredible. Well, probably best that we let you get moving, but I really do appreciate your time, Jamie. It's really cool to kind of see a little bit more insight into your looks into hunting, but also just to see how passionate you are about it. It is really quite a thing that I think draws a lot of us in, and it's cool to find, I guess, like-minded people, but also people who are kind of leading the way with it. So thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm looking forward to actually watching a few more of your videos and getting after that, but I'd also point the listeners over to your channel. So once again, it's Mountain Man Hunting Films for your YouTube channel, and your Instagram page is the Mountain Man _NZ. But we'll have to definitely have you on after 2020 elk hunt. That'd be sick. Get a full recap.
Yeah, cool, man. Thanks very much for the opportunity. I always enjoy sharing this wonderful sport that we call hunting, and wish you all the best in 2020 with your bow, and hopefully you manage to take that red.
Thank you.
Red.
Yeah, likewise. I think 2020 is going to be a good year for me. I've got a good feeling about it.
Yeah, cool. Well, mate, if you've got a good feeling about it, I'm sure you'll make it happen. So
yeah,
just keep that positive attitude.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think that's like what a lot of what you've already said in the episode, but I think that really does come down to how good you're going to go out in the bush. And often I'll get into a new ridge and I'm like, nah, get over the next hill. Like, you never know what's going to be there. And it's that positive mindset that I think keeps you out in the bush that gives you more opportunities.
Mate, that next ridge will breathe life back into your hunt. It could just be the game changer. So,
yeah,
definitely.
Oh, dude, thank you. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, mate, we're going to go to the pool now.
Cool. Enjoy. That's it, guys. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Becoming a Bow Hunter. You guys can follow along with the journey at becomingabowhunter.podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can also head across to the YouTube channel, which is Becoming a Bow Hunter. So guys, follow along. We've got a whole heap of different recipe videos up there, as well as different snippets from along the way, along the journey so far. If you guys do enjoy the show, please pass it around. If you got something out of this show, then I'm sure another bow hunter, another friend of yours would get a hell of a lot out of it as well. So please share the love, share the podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in.